And so the reason number 3 for the division of the kingdom will be this: Ephraim's jealousy of the kingdom of Judah. Ephraim's jealousy. Okay, so how was the kingdom divided? Jeroboam calls for the northern kings. As soon as Rehoboam says, okay, you know what, this is what we're going to do, we're going to raise taxes, then Jeroboam steps up and he says, okay, Israel, to your tents. You know what that means? We're done with this meeting. We're seceding from the union. And Jeroboam was the recognized leader, and the people looked up to him and would gladly crown him the king of the north. And so what they did was they listened to Jeroboam. When Jeroboam said, everybody to your tents, this was an unexpected turn of events. Rehoboam didn't see this one coming. You got to read about that a little bit, because they were having this meeting in the north. It was probably not the best place to have the meeting. Having the meeting up in the north, probably not the best place to say we're going to raise taxes, and then the people that are already all around you have just seceded from the union, and you're seen as the enemy. And it turns out that Rehoboam barely escapes with his life. He hightails it back for Jerusalem as fast as he could go, and he barely escapes with his life. Okay, we're going to look at map 50. I want you to get a little bit, and that's the last page in your notes. Now I want you to get a little bit of the lay of the land when we say we have the north and we have the south. And so we've got up here Israel, and you can see that Israel goes way up here. And Dan, you see Dan way up there? All right, so we've got Dan, and then it crosses the Jordan River and takes in all this area, and that's Israel. They've got a lot larger territory, and this is Judah down here. You see that on your map? Got Judah. Okay, who has the most territory, Israel or Judah? Israel has more territory. Now I want you to notice up in the upper right-hand corner, what is it? Aram. That's also called Syria. Not Assyria, but Aram or Syria. That figures in a lot in this divided kingdom era. Okay, so we have circled in red on this map. You probably have more. Do you have any circles? Okay. I've circled on here Jerusalem as the capital of the south. Now when you think about the capitals, you think about the north having more than one capital. It took them a while to figure out where their capital was going to be. And so in the south, you've got just Jerusalem, but in the north, you've got Shechem. Everybody find Shechem on your map. You might want to circle Shechem. Let me see if I've got another. No. I guess I've got them circled a little bit later on the presentation. Shechem is right here. It's in the north, straight north of Jerusalem, pretty much. Shechem is right there. And Rehoboam established that immediately as his capital. And then if you cross the river, there's Penuel, and he fortified Penuel as sort of an administrative center. And so he's got two centers of administration, one on one side of the river and one on the other side of the river, which probably made a lot of sense. So you could have a government center on both sides of the river. Later on, we have Tisra, and we will have Samaria as also as capitals of the north. So they finally settled on Samaria being the capital, but it bounces around a little bit. Okay, the south had how many tribes?
One.
The south had how many tribes? Okay, 2. What were they? Benjamin and Judah. The north had how many tribes? 10. I thought there were 12. Okay, maybe. All right, so we've got 10 in the north and 2 in the south. I guess does that equal 12, Shauna? Okay, thank you. All right, the idolatry of the northern tribes, Jeroboam's unbelief, 1 Kings 12. You need to look at this passage. Open your Bible up to 1 Kings chapter 12. You know what? He stood at the threshold of being able to establish his kingdom, and that God was going to do it for him. And he was right there where he could have had the world by the tail, so to speak. But in 1 Kings 12, 26 and 27, I want you to look at what it says. 1 Kings 12, 26 and 27. Somebody read that for me. Real good and loud.
Jeroboam said in his heart, now the kingdom will return to the house of David. If his people go up to offer sacrifices in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, then the heart of this people will return to their Lord, even to Rehoboam, king of Judah, and they will kill me and return to Rehoboam, king of Judah.
You see what's going on? He's up there, he's the king, and he's saying to himself, you know, I'm not so sure how secure my position as king is. I don't think it's very secure at all. Because every year we have these pilgrim festivals where the people go to Jerusalem and they sing all these festive songs that David wrote, and they do all these wonderful things about going to Jerusalem all the time. And they're going to make these trips to Jerusalem, and the nostalgia is going to kick in, and they're going to say, you know, maybe it wasn't such a good idea for us to secede from the Union anyway. And maybe there'll be even some concessions on the taxes. You know, you never know what he was thinking exactly, except the word fear. He was feeling fear. That was the key thing he was feeling. And so it was out of fear that he led Israel into idolatry. He says, I can't have them going back to Jerusalem. We've got to establish worship centers here in the north. And so that's what Jeroboam did. Instead of being faithful to God, he does exactly the opposite. As we'll see in a couple of minutes, he creates new centers of worship, creates new gods, even a new holiday. And builds new altars and a new priesthood. Instead of the Levitical priesthood, he decided, no, we don't want that anymore. And so he picks people from various backgrounds and puts them in the priesthood. He has just departed and he has created a counterfeit religion for the north. They don't even worship the same God anymore. Jeroboam set up altars in Bethel and Dan. And letter D is Jeroboam's judgment, is in 1 Kings 13, 33 and 34. And I want us to look at that. Jeroboam's judgment, 1 Kings 13, 33. Somebody read that for me. Let me turn to my other notes. Oh, Jerusalem. He doesn't want them to return to Jerusalem. Was that back?
Yeah, but you said
Oh, okay. Yeah, we didn't put that in there, did we? Sorry. Yeah, it was an editorial. So here's the thing. We don't want them going back there because then it'll be my neck. This was all about Jeroboam. It was not about the people. It was not about their relationship with God. It was not that he was trying to establish what he truly believed in. He didn't really believe in these gods. He deliberately created a worship system that he knew wasn't true. Isn't that awful? And yet I think that's done all the time. I think there are a lot of people that create new religious beliefs, not because they believe in it, but because they want power. They want people to follow them. They want recognition. And so they say, you know, don't follow what these people believe and what you've been taught all your life. Instead, this is what you ought to believe. And you know what? They don't care about what is true. It's all about them. Jeroboam was a wicked man. He created a religious system and led people to worship false gods he knew weren't true because he was afraid they were going to kill him if they still served the one true God. So let's yank him away from that. He didn't care about their souls at all. There's something very despicable about that. When you play with people's eternity and you don't care whether they go to heaven or hell, if you can line your pocket with some money or you can get some influence and popularity. That's the most despicable thing I can think of. Now here are those centers that we were mentioning. And you'll notice that way in the north is Dan, and he built an altar up there for the people so that if you lived kind of north, you could go up there, and he had a golden calf set up in the north and an altar up there in Dan. And then he put another one down here almost on the border of Israel and not very far from Jerusalem down here, just straight north of it. He made an altar at Bethel for people that were used to traveling south. You don't have to cross the border, folks. You just stop right here at Bethel. Probably had flashing signs out there. Worship center. New worship center. And then I've circled the places that were capitals in various times in this divided kingdom era. The prophets of the northern kingdom. We have some non-writing prophets to the north. Ahijah. 1 Kings chapter 14. You got to turn to this because this is where the word of the Lord comes to Jeroboam about his wickedness. So in 1 Kings chapter 14. Okay? Now while you're turning there, let's just make sure we know where I want everybody to keep this in perspective.